Hi, I'm Amy Edwards, and welcome to the Edwards Table. This podcast is all about real conversations, the kind that come from life, love, family, friendship, and all the messy, beautiful parts in between. I started this show because I believe in redemption stories and in sitting down together to talk about the things that shape us, heal us, and sometimes just make us laugh. So grab a seat, take a breath, and join me, because there's always room for you here at the Edwards Table. Well, hey everyone, and welcome to the Edwards Table. My name is Amy Edwards, and I am your host for this Edwards Table podcast. So excited to have you all here today. And before we jump in, I want to welcome any new listeners we have to the table today. Definitely make sure you got a little something to snack and sip while you join me for this episode. And then the second thing I want to say before we jump in is I sat down to record and my microphone stopped working. So I'm wearing some ginormous headphones, earbuds, whatever they're called, okay? They're from, I think, 1997. I'm kidding, but they're very old because I'm not a headphone user. So if I'm out in public, I don't play things out loud or whatever, and I don't like to talk on my phone. So it's just not normal for me to have headphones, all right? The other pair I dug out that like plug into the phone are so old they don't go with the phone I have anymore, so that was fun. And then these headphones didn't have a charge, so I had to sit and wait on that. It's just been a day. It has been a day. I don't know, anybody out there got a hand up for that? Having a day? I'm with you. Totally with you. But listen, all this to say, I'm super excited to have you all here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And I'm so excited to start this whole month of February doing some fun. Let's try that again. I wouldn't say fun, but I would say some really good diving into healing and trust. If you've been along for this journey, you have heard bits and pieces about my childhood and whatnot, and I'll give you kind of a high level of that later in this episode. But for any of you who maybe don't know us, here we're just solid, transparent peeps. That's just how it rolls. And so just wanted to kind of think through today as I have been contemplating really what to talk about in these upcoming weeks. And I'm like, you know what? February for some people is a great month. February for some people is a really hard month. And February for some people is just another one of the 12 months. And so I thought, you know what? As I am trying this year to love myself well, I figure, talking about the healing, but then also trusting again and what that looks like, kind of what I've learned along the way and how I've navigated it. That's kind of what we're going to jump into today. So super excited for y'all to be here. Learning how to trust after some really, really hard and horrible things have happened to me was not this like wake up one day and just say, I'm going to trust people again. It's been a process. And if I'm very honest, it is an ongoing process in certain aspects of my life. So in terms of talking about some things that happened in my life by people who I should be able to trust. And as a young child, that happened, and that trust was broken. And sadly, it took me learning how to trust again, but it also took me to a place where I also had to learn truly who God was, and not put all of that in one bucket, if you will. So thinking about how this came to be part of my story. So we're going to jump back to when I was a wee little girl. And I tell this whole story during season 1. And if you pop it down below in the show notes, you can see the link to the previous season. And that's where it's all laid out. But just really briefly, it was a summer that I turned 10, so I was going into the 5th grade, and I came back from visiting with my grandparents and realized that I was very angry, very upset, but just really couldn't put words to the why I was feeling this way. And as life would have it, I was watching an after-school special. And for any of you younglings out there, back in the day, we did not have Netflix, we did not have a Prime account, we did not have anything on demand in terms of television. And so there were certain times of the day where there were children-friendly and kid-appropriate programming. And so after school was when they would definitely get us there. And so they had what was called the after-school special. And it was kind of a drama series, if you will, but it wasn't really a series. It was just on topics that, kids could be dealing with and whatnot. And one I vividly remember was about latchkey children. I digress. But in any case, so there was one episode that I watched, and it was about this girl, and she had been with someone that was a family member, and that family member was touching her in inappropriate ways. And it was like a light bulb kind of went off into my head that I had been struggling with some feelings I had when I came home from my most recent visit. So when I would go away for the summer, I would go stay with grandparents and my father and friends and whoever would take me right in those 6 weeks that I was gone. And so I came home just this angry child. And when my mom would approach me about it, I couldn't get words, but I would yell and I'd be very disrespectful. I do remember not being kind at all. A lot of tears and a lot of just confusion. So as the weeks wound down and it was starting to get ready to be back to school time, finally one night my mom sat me down and was like, you either tell me what's going on, but if you're going to keep acting like this, I'm just going to pack you up and send you back to your dad's. And that for me was the door being flung open for me to be able to put words to what I had just started figuring out. I didn't have a lot of exact descriptions of actual incidents that had happened, but over the course of my summers and coming home, I had all kinds of very not fun things going on, physically, as well as just being a very confused human, not sure which end was up. And knowing that certain things that my dad had done with me were not normal for girls and boys to be experiencing with a parent. So I tried to tell my mom as best as I could. Of course, initially she was, I would assume, shocked and horrified, it seemed, in the situation for sure. And shortly thereafter, I went back to school. And I was raised in a small Lutheran school, a very sweet little school, one class of each grade level. When I was going to school there, and over time they started kind of increasing, but it was very tiny. I mean, you're talking classes of 20, 25 students. So I had been going there since first grade, went to church there, knew everybody, their best friend's cousin, their hamster's friends. All the people, they all knew you, kind of a thing. And so my mom had shared this with a couple of her girlfriends. As you would, right? You're a single mom, a couple of your girlfriends are single moms, another girlfriend not, but all of them have daughters my age, and just trying to gain wisdom and figure this all out. And unfortunately, one of those moms then took it back to her daughter, who then brought it back to school. So my 5th grade year was spent being relentlessly tormented by my peer group. Students were absolutely horrific in how they would make fun of me, say just the most god-awful things to me. And so I spent the majority of my 5th grade year out in the hall, actually. My teacher that year, after a few weeks of me just being inconsolable and crying all the time, let me know that I was being a distraction in the class. And so she pulled me out in the hallway and gave me a pretty good tongue lashing about being a distraction, that other students couldn't learn. And if I was going to be this emotional, I would bring my work out into the hall. And that's what I did. So when I was having rough days out in the hall, I would go. and I would get my work done. My mom actually had no idea this was going on because, one, what I learned from telling her initially about what was going on was she obviously had friends that she was going to share it with, and unfortunately one of those friends couldn't be trusted. Now, mind you, I'm 10 years old, so the best I could figure at that time in my life was talking to my mom was not safe, and my dad was not safe, and there were no other relatives close by. Everybody was 700-800 miles away from us. So my 5th grade year, I learned to be very independent. I learned that I could do things on my own, and also within that, right? So the being teased and tormented by my friends and peers at school, just how limited I was with being able to actually trust people my age even. So my 5th grade year really did not set me up for success when it came to actually trusting other human beings. It put me on high alert, and I learned very quickly that there were clear signs of people that could be trusted and clear signs of people that couldn't be trusted. The unfortunate part of this in my school year was also, I went to a little private school, right? I said it was a Lutheran school, which is a denomination in the church. And unfortunately, my view of God and how he treats me really got skewed that year. I believed that if everyone around me was ashamed and embarrassed of me and making fun of me, then God definitely was. And so I carried that burden of belief and that lie that I was believing. I carried that with me for many, 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 many years. And because I carried that with me, I really struggled with not only who God was, but truly trusting him, right? Because everyone that I should in my little 10-year-old world be able to trust had let me down, albeit whether it was intentional or unintentional, it still happened. And at 10, we're not equipped to sift through all of that in our little 10-year-old minds and hearts. And so for me, what I took away from it was trust no one. God can't be trusted. People can't be trusted. You just don't trust anybody. The other thing, and this is so heartbreaking. I remember this so vividly. The other thing that I really struggled with, and I had been actually dealing with this for several years of my childhood, and that was fear of death. I was scared every night I went to bed that if I didn't pray a prayer, if I didn't lay in my bed the right way, if I didn't have certain things arranged in my room, like things put away and neat and tidy and things like all these different things that I had to have done. Because if I were to die when I was sleeping, I was scared that God was gonna, when I woke up and, came to the pearly gates, right? That he was gonna say, you weren't good, a girl, you weren't good enough. And so, I was just a mess, y'all. 10 years old and thought I had the whole world figured out. And unfortunately, my world had crumbled and collapsed around me. And I was taking very, very, very much to heart everything that people were saying to me and telling me about myself. And then throwing it back over to God and telling him, if that's how people are, then you can't be better. So then you think about, so I have this concept of inability to trust and a very, very warped sense of what trust actually is. So you think about, I took that with me into my teenage years. I took that with me into my 20s. So I did high school with these skewed views. And granted, as I got older, please don't hear me say that I had a 10-year-old mentality the rest of my life. It's not that, but it definitely has spilled over into all of those areas of my life, right? In terms of trusting people and trusting in God. And so as it continued to go with me, it was one of my bags that I carried with me, if you will, of all that emotional baggage that I was carrying with me. It was just one of those backpacks that I threw on. And as I came into my 20s, this is when I got finished up college, got engaged, got married, got pregnant with Quinn, and then I actually had all my babies in my 20s. So a lot going on in my life then. And as I matured and as I started going back to church as someone who wanted to, not just because I needed to for attendance at school, which was my elementary, right? But like high school, college, early adult years, I started really getting into my church attendance and things like reading the Bible more. And so my situation then was, okay, it was evident when I started listening to like what they were saying at church, like when the pastor's speaking, right? Or reading maybe a devotional book, or doing a Bible study where you read some Bible verses and then, you're answering questions and things like this. Especially into my high school, into my 20s, I started really wrestling with these ideas, just taking them and mulling them and whatever else, as much as life would allow, right? Because of course I was working and going to school, getting married, still working, going 100 miles an hour, trying to figure out marriage, trying to figure out being a mom, all the things. And so with that came a very slow process, right? It was years of me trying to take this. I guess my picture for this is like a big old knotted wad of yarn. Like, can you think about that? Like, it's just a mess. I mean, it's just like, you look at it and you're thinking, ugh, I don't want to touch that. And I'm not even going to try to unravel that. I'm just going to throw it away and start over again. Very much my life. That was my life, was the knotted yarn ball. And so when I started thinking through it and started really growing more in my understanding of who God is according to what his word says, right? When you open up the Bible and you start reading about him, I start seeing this, and it's like, okay, actually what the Bible says versus what I'm believing about him is wrong. Like, the Bible says he's loving, he's caring, he's kind, he's compassionate. He knows me by name, that he knew me before he knit me together in my mother's womb, that he knows when I'm coming and when I'm going and when I sit and when I stand and when I lay my head down at night. Like, he knows me. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. If he knows me like that, then one, there's not this expectation of what I should be doing, right? He doesn't have like this checklist that he's like, well, that Amy girl, y'all, she didn't do this and she didn't do that, but she did this and she did that. So she gets 2 yeses or 2 stars on her chart for the week, and has failed at everything else. The more I got to learn about God, truly getting to know him, the more that knotted ball of mess called my life, where everything had just collided and spun out of control, very, very slowly that ball was starting to kind of open and unwind, if you will. And I think too about it, and it's like, so I said, I started going back to church more, doing Bible studies, reading my Bible, praying. Like, and when I say praying, if you're not familiar or you don't do it, literally it's a conversation. It's not maybe what the world would tell us, which is this great pomp and circumstance. It's truly a conversation. And so even that for me was something I had to accept and really understand that, when Jesus walked the earth for his 33 years here on the planet, he prayed constantly. Like, he was talking to God all the time. And he is our example, right, of what our relationship with God should be. And so, like, I think I was starting to learn back then how very, very valuable that kind of communication with him was. And also I had to figure out and make the decision that as I was learning about who God was, that he truly was not like the people who had hurt me in my childhood. That those qualities were not his, and not to say that they were all bad and whatever else, but the specific things that had happened between us, albeit, a not understanding teacher putting me out in the hall, kids in school who were bullying me because they were joking about me having sex with my dad. Y'all, a hot mess, I'm here to tell you. But being able to take that and set it outside of my view for what God actually looks like, who he is and what he is, and realizing that throughout all of those times, he never did leave me. And he definitely is the perfect father. And I think for someone like me, and maybe for you too, like when you have been hurt by someone so badly, and then it layers because there are multiple facets of either people or the same person in a situation, whatever the case may be, right? The thicker those layers get, the slower that process is, right? Because the further you are away from something, the longer it's going to take for you to get back to it. Bottom line. Doesn't make you bad, doesn't make you wrong. It's just the reality of life. And so I just thankfully met some really, really amazing people. And I'm trying to think. I don't think any of them are currently part of my life. I'm just going to kind of side note for a second, but just, I want you to hear me say this because this is something that really has been hard for me, especially as I have come into my 50s. I don't know why it's taken me this long, and maybe you already know this, and awesome for you, but bless my heart because I have really struggled. And that is that people are in and out of our lives with plan and purpose. Like God crosses our paths on purpose with people, and our journeys don't necessarily stay side to side from birth to death, right? Like they come into our lives or we come into theirs, and there's a time for us to be together as friends or as family or whatever. And then for whatever the circumstance may be, I mean, not to be morbid, but it could be death, right? But like in terms of friendships and things like that, maybe you move away from one another. And so your friendship doesn't look the same because you can't pop over and have, tea and muffins at whim. But that is not a bad thing. It can be really hard. It can be very lonely. I'm speaking from personal experience, but people in our lives. And so I just wanted to pause for a second and say this. If you have had people in your life that maybe have been really good in speaking into you, or very good at speaking into you, or very wise in what they say to you and things of that nature, but maybe they were only here for a short while, and then they moved on, you moved on, and there are things that happen or whatnot. I would just highly encourage you to know that there will be more of those people that will cross your path. And to cherish them as long as you have them there. But yeah, sorry, that was a little side note, and I just wanted to say that out loud because for me personally, that's been really hard to accept when people who I love and care about and I have opened my life up to have to leave my life for whatever the reason, like I said, whatever the reason may be. So back to like thinking about the things, right, that helped me through this. Sorry, as I jump off the tracks and back on again. The other thing, I didn't mention this. I've said it many times before in other episodes if you haven't been with us, but like my spiritual life, huge for me, but also the people who are in my life. And I did go to professional therapy. I did therapy for about 11 years for a couple of different reasons. And one of them was my childhood. One of them was learning how to be able to heal from that. I needed help doing that. And so sometimes I can be a little bit coy and a little bit cheeky, if you will, about therapy. And please don't ever take it as I'm knocking it, because I personally have used a therapist, like I said, for about 11 years. I met with her off and on, and just to help me learn to do some things that I either hadn't been taught or hadn't learned along the way. And I needed to be able to stand up on my own 2 feet, to get my heart to start to heal, to get my head in a good space where I wasn't believing all of these lies and condemning myself to death every day. That's really how I lived a good chunk of my 20s. And so all of those things working together. Well, y'all, if you just listen to that list of like 700 things, right? That is not fast. It doesn't happen overnight. And I know I said that earlier, but it doesn't. Healing and learning to trust is a process. It's not an event. It's just like the older I get, the more I feel like I say the same thing over again. But it's just like everything else, right? You want to lose weight? You girl. Yes, I would love to. Thank you. Well, you have some obstacles that you're going to have to learn how to overcome, right? Amy, you're going to have to learn self-control, girl. Even though you left some bread, you need to calm down. You're going to have to learn that when you are in your 40s and 50s, that your hormones decide to do like a 180-degree turn and be like, yeah, no, everything you used to do to be healthy, that doesn't work anymore. So good luck, and we're wishing you the best. Oh, and when you get on a good track, forget about it, because then it's going to change again, and then you're really not going to know what's going on. Are you intolerant to gluten? We don't know. Today you broke out into hives? Good luck. Tomorrow you might be itching. Y'all, it's a whole thing. I'm sorry, but it is. And so with all of that, I say it tongue-in-cheek, being silly, but also being very honest. It is a process. It is not an event. And it's just like with healing. I think about that too. Like if you've ever had any kind of a wound, and I'm not talking like paper cut, y'all. I mean, granted, paper cut, not fun. You remember it when the lemon juice and the salt gets in there. But I'm talking about like, you've gotten a gash on your arm, or like even as major as like having had surgery or something of that nature. The healing process, it takes time. And throughout healing, it's not always fun. Think about it. When you get like a really big cut and then it scabs over, and then it goes through these different phases of being really sore. Like every time you touch it, you just want to cry because it hurts so badly. And then that starts to calm down. But it starts to feel so comfortable, and then all of a sudden you forget about it, and then you bang into something and you're back to tears again. And then you get past that part, and then Lord of mercy, here comes the itching. It's a whole thing. And then if you don't want a scar, you've got to also remember, hey, don't forget to put your coconut oil on there and whatever. I mean, like, it's a whole thing, right? It's healing. Well, that is no different with our own heart and with our minds when we have been hurt in such a traumatic and impactful way. And I'm not saying that you have to have a childhood like mine, and that you have to go through having had abusive parents or anything like that. But what I am saying is when really hard things happen, the healing process takes time. And I think one thing that is so beautiful to me, and that I am beyond thankful for, is God doesn't have a timeline for healing you in terms of your ability to allow that healing to take place. Okay, so let me say that again. God does not have a timeline to say you have to be healed by such and such a date. He is patient, he is loving, he is kind, he's considerate. He is love. When we talk about what love is, that's what he is for us. He never forsakes us, meaning he never walks away. He is always constant and available and here. It's us that does the walking away. It's not him. And so what is so gorgeous about me learning more about God's character and who he is, and being able to unravel that big old nasty ball of mess, is that what God then does with all of that is he takes that whole wad of yarn, now that it's unraveled. Now remember, if you think about it, you unravel a big old nasty ball of yarn, it's still this big blobby mess everywhere. What do you have to do? You've got to wind it back up again. And that's what God does for us. He helps us untangle it, but then he helps us to wind it back into a ball again. Because what happens when you have that ball of yarn and you're ready to go with it, it's all one big, nice, pretty ball and it's been wound, it's ready to be made into something new. Y'all, that is the best part. That is the gorgeous part of having gone through what I went through. And when I tell you my story is nothing but one beautiful ribbon of redemption that is woven all through it, that's exactly the picture. It's taking just this wadded mess, this disgusting situation, and I've had more than just that. Y'all, go listen to season 1 if you hadn't already. I am telling y'all right now, Netflix should be calling me any day. But the beauty of what God does in redeeming all of that, and he is patient. He does not have any kind of a timer on you, a schedule on you, in terms of patience and loving and caring. You keep going to him, he will always be there. He will always be there. And I think something interesting I thought about when I have shared this with people that are going through really hard things. Maybe you're in the middle of this right now, like you're trying to unravel that ball in your own life. And you're like, you know what, Amy? I go and I talk to God, but I don't hear him say anything to me. I don't feel anything other than hurt and upset. Here's what I would love to encourage you with, is that I didn't either. I didn't always hear God telling me, atta girl, good job, way to go, hang in there, you're good, I love you. He didn't do that for me either. But you know what he did do? He put some beautiful people in my life that crossed paths with me, that were good listeners, that were good encouragers, that were good accountability partners, that were silly and fun and loving, that were Christians, that weren't Christians. He used so many different people in my life along the way, and still is, to pour into me. And when I say that, y'all, I'm sorry. If you're not part of the church world and I start speaking Christianese, drop me a comment and be like, girl, what are you even saying right now? Because like your accent's hard enough, but then you start smacking all this stuff in here. Just throw this girl a comment. I'll help you sort it. But when I have had these beautiful human beings in and out of my life along the way who have magnified when I may be heading off on the wrong path, and they're magnifying it and are like, Amy, whoa, like, I'm pretty sure that's not where you're meant to be. Like running from telling my story, big one right there. And they will have helped corral me back and push me back to where they know I'm meant to go. Or just like people that are hilarious. Y'all, I love me a good belly laugh. And so God very graciously has put people like that in my life. So when you're questioning the silence of where you are right now, like, God, I can't hear you. I don't feel you. Like, I should be able to feel something and not feel alone and feel over all this overwhelming, gross, I don't even know how to put words to it, all the feels, right? That's when I would encourage you to pause and truly sit and contemplate, who are the people in your life right now? How are they loving on you? How are they showing up for you? And if your answer is, I really don't have those people in my life right now, then my next question is going to be, where are you going to church? Where are you seeking your community? That is a big deal. Finding a place where you can be plugged in, where people are going to love on you well. Church is where it's at. I'm going to tell you, I like an adult beverage, but a bar isn't it. I love good food, but a restaurant isn't it. I tolerate exercise, but the gym isn't it. Community definitely can be there, right? Like, I'm not saying you can't go to the gym and have community. Good heavens, don't start that with me. But what I am saying is that make sure your community is also plugged into your church. Community that comes from where your belief is in Christ is huge. It is life-changing. Albeit they're human beings too. So you never know what your story may bring to their life and what their story may bring to yours. It's just beautiful. So the last thing that I want to leave with you all is this. My faith, I know I talk about it all the time, and I don't apologize. It's part of who I am. Love me, love all the things. There is a passage in scripture. It's from the book of Psalms, which if you have a Bible and you flip open your Bible halfway on either side, right to the middle, the book of Psalms usually is where it'll land. And it's Psalm 139. It's interesting because there are some folks who feel like this is a suffocating passage. Like they feel like when they read it, to them, it feels like, well, God is just all up in my business and, all the things. When I read it, I have great comfort in it because for me, it's written by King David, who is a famous king back in the Old Testament. And even if you're not in church, you're probably familiar with the whole slingshot and Goliath business. That's the David I'm talking about. But very gifted musician and wrote many a psalm. And he is writing this. So I would love for you to go and grab a Bible. And if you don't have one, Google the Bible app, and you can pick they have, I don't know, a bazillion, and not really, but they have a lot of different versions of the Bible and whatnot. I typically do all of my reading before I cross-reference. I start in the NIV, New International Version, and it's written more kind of in a newspaper style, so it's pretty straightforward in terms of language and things, and for me that works. I am not knocking any of your versions or any of the things, but I probably wouldn't start in the King James Version, because that's written in Old English, and so we don't talk that way anymore, and it's a little like, whoo, that's a lot of ye's and thous and theists. But if you want a good challenge, jump there. Nonetheless, highly recommend you go and read Psalm 139 and think about it when you are in a time of trouble. And this is where it comes from David too, where life feels or has felt. I'm prayerful you're not all in the same situation of trying to get over really hard things. But whether you're in the midst of it, been in the midst of it, or are looking forward to the next fun time when life gets crazy, read it from the perspective of, I feel hopeless, I feel helpless, I feel scared, I feel alone. Read it from that perspective. And then drop me a comment and tell me what you think. It's so beautiful to me the way that it's written, and it just speaks to my heart that God knows my coming and my going. He knew me before I was knit together in my mother's womb. He knows when I go and when I come back and when I lay my head down. Everything I was telling you earlier, it's all from Psalm 139. And for me, it gives me enormous peace and solace. And there are many verses that do that for me. But when I was thinking about speaking to you all today and kind of talking about this healing and learning how to trust again, right? The beautiful thing is that you don't have to fully trust people because they're going to let you down. But fully putting your trust in the Lord, He will never let you down. He will never leave you. He'll never forsake you. And what that means is He's not going anywhere. When you say yes to Him, He says yes forever. And it's such a beautiful relationship that I have. And He is so, I cannot say so enough, patient with me. I am not an easy human being. I don't know if you've been around for a while or if you know me at all, but that's the facts. I am not an easy human being. And yet, He made me who I am, and he used all of that gross abuse and nasty, just horrid conditional love that I have experienced. And he redeemed it through a great marriage, 2 beautiful children who prayerfully as adults are going to launch into their lives making really good choices and hopefully get married, have kiddos, all the things, right? And that means that next generation is going to be taught to love themselves, love the Lord, and love others the way that he commands us to. So with all of that, I just wanted to pop on this week and during this month be able to talk more with you guys about just this whole concept of healing and trusting. I think that if we're going to love ourselves well, which is the only way we're going to love others well, right? So if you're a wife, it's the only way you're going to love your husband well. If you're a mom, only way you're going to love your kids well. If you're a sister, only way you're going to love your siblings well. If you're a child, the only way you're going to love your parents well. And if you're a human being, only way you're going to love other human beings well, right? And so I'm just really excited for this month and to be able to come on here and talk more with you guys about these ideas and just kind of my story and how I've done these things along the way. I can promise you this, you'll hear the term, or the phrase, this is a process, not an event. And so give yourselves that grace. Give yourselves that grace, not because I tell you to, but because God gives us that grace. And he expects that we're going to slip and fall. He expects that we're going to be upset. He expects that when we're feeling overwhelmed and we just need to yell and cuss it out, he expects that we come to him and do that with him. Let him hear our pain, our suffering. Let him see our tears. Let him be a part of those things, because that is part of being in a relationship with someone that deeply. And y'all, he can handle it. I promise you he can, because I may not say bad words on this podcast, but I can assure you that my mouth is not pure and holy. A lot of the time I have to ask for a lot of forgiveness, and I ask God to please just frame my thoughts and let the Holy Spirit just tie my tongue, because that's who I am. I am a Team Peter kind of a disciple gal. Yikes, work in progress. I told y'all last time, God is going to keep me here what will feel like an eternity, because he's like, girl, we got so much work to do with you. Okay, y'all. So with all of that said, here is a question I have for you. There's 2 of them. Are you ready? Where did you learn love from? Think about that. Where did you learn what love is, how to do it, who did you love with, right? Where? Second question, whose voice do you hear when you think about God? Is it possible that you have 2 different answers there? If trust feels really hard for you, you're not broken. You are human. It's not surprising, y'all. Not surprising at all. So I just want to say thank you one more time to all of you who joined me today. Next week, I'm excited. Y'all are going to love next week. We're going to talk about what healing really has looked like for me, from my perspective, all the things I've gone through and whatever else. So between now and then, just remember this. There is always room for you at this table, even if learning how to trust is figuring out how to just sit down. Until next time, y'all, I can't wait. See ya.